in order for us to understand Celsius, Fahrenheit, and all the things that go with it, we have to, in order to understand that, be able to convert from Celsius to Fahrenheit. In the United States, we use Fahrenheit. Everywhere else, they use Celsius. And then you'll also hear of a measurement called a Kelvin. We've probably maybe talked about that in science. Yes, no, maybe so? With a K instead of a C or an F. Okay, we're not going to do any kelvins in here, but that is another measurement for temperature, in case you were ever wondering. If you work in a science field, healthcare field again, or any science-related field, you will solely use Celsius. But you still live in America, so you must understand Fahrenheit as well. Okay, so something special to note. A given temperature will almost always have a higher number in Fahrenheit than it does in Celsius, with the exception of temperatures below -40, in which Fahrenheit becomes lower. So once we get past the -40 point, then the Fahrenheit number is lower than the Celsius number. Hopefully, in your world, you never get below -40. That would be my hope. And if you do, you better stay inside. All right. Some notable temperatures, things you need to note. Water freezes at 0 degrees Celsius and 32 degrees Fahrenheit. You've been taught that since you were probably in 3rd grade. Some of you may have known it before that. So when we do conversions, 32 is always going to be our number, our magic number we use in our equations for conversions, because 0, 32 are equal. Normal body temperature. And I put normal with an asterisk because that would be what they state as normal. Everybody will have their own normal body temperature. If I took your temperature right now, that would be what we consider normal. Some of you may be higher, some of you may be lower. If you're an infant, you're higher. Sometimes as an older person, you may be lower or higher. It totally depends, but they just say as normal can be. So in Celsius, it's 36.8, and in Fahrenheit, it's 98.2. Anytime you're over one of those two, you are what we call running a fever. Water boils at 100 degrees Celsius and 212 degrees Fahrenheit. And the reason I have 2 asterisks there, that also depends on your elevation. So how high up in the air are you? And that will change, or how low are you? So this is at sea level, 100 degrees Celsius, 212 degrees Fahrenheit. So you're probably asking, why do I need to know this? One question, real life experience, you may someday want to go to Canada. Some of you may want to go to Canada when you're 19. Does 12 degrees Celsius sound cold to you? Raise your hand if you think 12 degrees Celsius is cold. Okay? Some of you are saying yes. So is 55 degrees Fahrenheit cold? Raise your hand if you think 55 degrees Fahrenheit is cold. So 12 degrees Celsius is, we're going to say, approximately 55 degrees Fahrenheit. I don't know, I haven't done the math for it. But now all of a sudden 12 doesn't sound as cold. All right, so converting from Celsius to Fahrenheit, we know that our number must increase. That's an automatic. So if we want to increase something, what are the 2 mathematical things that we can do? Adding, subtracting, multiplying, and dividing. Whatever the 2 of those we can do. Someone? Kelly. Add, subtract, multiply, or divide. Does that increase or decrease numbers? Which one increases? What? Okay, adding. So we know that if we're going from Celsius to Fahrenheit, one thing we have to do is add. What's another thing we have to do? Subtract, multiply, or divide. KB? Multiply. So anytime we want to increase a number, we can add to it to increase it, or we can multiply it to increase it. So in order for us to increase our temperature to a Fahrenheit number, we know we're going to do some multiplication and some addition. And I gave you two equations. One has a fraction in it, which some of you hate, and one does not. For me, it's easier to do the 1.8. I have no fractions. I don't have to remember 9/5. I can just remember 1.8. What's the number that's always going to be constant that I said earlier in both of our equations? 32. So what number in essence do you have to remember? No. We know 32 is always constant. 1.8, right? So in this, we take our Celsius number, multiply it by 1.8, and add 32 to it. So if we are doing our 12 degrees, we would take 1.8 times 12 and add 32. Order of operations is important, because if you take 12 and add 32 and then multiply it by 1.8, you get a totally different number. So you have to do your multiplication and then your addition. All right, here's your example. If we know the temperature outside is 12 degrees Celsius, then what is it in Fahrenheit? So we set up our equation. Fahrenheit equals 1.8 times 12 plus 32. And if you're doing it along with me on your paper, you'll get that 1.8 times 12 is 21.6. Then we add 32 to that, and we should get Fahrenheit equals 53.6 degrees. And in this class, we've talked about it more than once. How do we check our answers? We don't. We plug it in, right? We redo it. So can we take the 53.6 and put it in for the F and leave the 12 out and be able to get the same answer? We should, but I'm going to show you a different way to check your answer. That would be converting from Fahrenheit to Celsius. Now we know that if we're going from Celsius to Fahrenheit, our number must go up. So if we're going from Celsius to Fahrenheit, the number goes up. If we're going from Fahrenheit to Celsius, our number will then go down. Thank you, Max. So in order to get something to go down, what two things must we do to it, or can we do to it? What, Garrett? Say it, please. Divide is one of them. Haley, what's another thing you could do? Subtract, okay? So to convert from Fahrenheit to Celsius, we're going to have to reduce our Fahrenheit number. So we use the above formula. And in essence, you're doing the opposite of what you just did. So you multiply by 1.18, now we're going to divide by 1.8, and you added 32, and now we're going to subtract 32. Order of operation, again, is important, and that's why there's parentheses there. So we take our Fahrenheit number, subtract 32, and then divide it by 1.8. And that will give us our Celsius. All right, so here's your example. If it is 85 degrees outside today, what is it in Celsius? C equals 85 minus 32 divided by 1.8. Not sure why I didn't get my underline there. Okay, so then we have 53 divided by 1.8. So our Celsius is 29.44444444. How I decide where to round it to is by checking my answer. Okay, so in this case, I could take my Celsius and plug it back into this equation. So I could take my 29.44 times 1.88 plus 32, And what I come up with is 84.99. Is that as close as I'm going to get to 85 without being exact? Yes. Okay. If you left off one of the 4s, you would come up to 84.92. Not as exact. Okay. So finding where the exact number is going to be is how you figure out what you do to round. Questions?